Missed the last program? It's ready for you now on planetaudio.org.nz.
The law made easy. Radio Waitakere Law.
Hello everybody and welcome to Radio Waitakere Law, the show to empower you with knowledge of your legal rights. We aim to explain the law in an understandable way and through examples in everyday life. Now today we're going to be talking about an area which is a part of everyday life for most people out there, and that is tenancy law. So this is our fourth show now, and you can catch all the other ones on our website, which is www.waitakerelaw.org.nz. Now another note is that this is just an information show only here, so if you've got an issue yourself with the topics that we raise, then it's probably better to come in and see us at the office and we can have a more in-depth chat about it. So we're from the Waitakere Community Law Service and we can possibly help you out, so give us a call. Like we always do on our show, we're going to be taking you through some common scenarios and how the law applies to those scenarios. So we're also going to have a bit of a chat about what's in the news and our community notice board this week. Full of some great events out there to see and do around Western and Northern Auckland, so that's going to be a great show. So don't go away, you're on Planet FM 104.6 with Radio Waitakere Law. I'm Shane Henderson and I'm one of the solicitors at the Law Service, and I'll bring in my regular co-hosts to introduce themselves as well.
Hi everybody, my name's Jonathan Myers and I am a Masters of Law student at the Auckland of Uni, and I volunteer over at the Waitakere Law Service as well, and I just basically come in here and help Shane out with these radio shows.
Excellent, and I'm Hayley Pati-Mangele and I'm with Shane at the Waitakere Community Law Service. So we give out free legal advice to people in need in the West and North Auckland areas. We'll tell you a bit more about our services as the show goes along.
Cheers guys, thanks for that. So today, like I said, we're going to be talking about tenancy. And this is one of those areas where the law is very important to the lives of people in New Zealand, and particularly those that are vulnerable. It has been true for a while now that housing is a problem in Auckland, a very bad problem, and there doesn't seem to be enough rental to go around. There probably hasn't been for at least 5 years, I'd say. So it's important to know your rights when you're a tenant, and particularly your rights and responsibilities when dealing with landlords. So we see clients about tenancy all the time for a variety of reasons, and it's particularly satisfying for us lawyers to every now and then make a real difference in the lives of people in a tangible way, especially when dealing with Housing New Zealand.
Now to talk about the Residential Tenancies Act 1986, it's the act that covers the law of tenancy in all of New Zealand, but the first thing we've got to cover today is the difference between flatmates and tenants, which is really important because one of them's not covered under the Act. Also, rent and bond is very important, and we're going to cover that later.
Cool. So we're also going to be talking about moving in and what you should be doing when you do that. For example, tenancy agreements, what you should be looking out for. Then we're going to cover some of the must-dos for tenants and the must-dos for landlords.
So, as you can see, we've got an action-packed show and a lot to get through today. Looking forward to getting into it. So don't forget you can listen to us again online at www.planetaudio.org.nz/Radio Waitakere Law. I'll just give you that one again. So that's www.planetaudio.org.nz/Radio Waitakere Law. So without further ado, let's get into these scenarios and have a crack at some tenancy law.
Okay, I've got one. So I moved in with a flatmate and we've been living together for 6 months or so now. She's constantly paying her rent, her part of the rent late, or not paying it at all. Not to mention that she's incredibly messy and annoying, and it's to a point that I just can't stand to be around her. So what should I do?
Okay, flatmates are people that live on the property but are not part of the tenancy agreement. So it's a very, very important distinction. So we'll break that down a bit more. This is different again from a boarder, which is where you live with someone that owns the house. Now, for what you've described is the perfectly common scenario of a flatmate and a tenant. So you're on the agreement, so you are the tenant and your flatmate is not, so she is not. Because you're on the agreement, you're entitled to all of your rights under the Residential Tenancies Act, which we'll go into a bit more later. But your flatmate, all of her rights actually come from you. So was there a tenancy agreement signed or anything like that?
No, there was nothing signed. We just had a verbal agreement about rent and everything like that.
Well, it's a good idea to get what's called a flatmate agreement. Now, this is a document that describes several important things like any notice that you have to give to get your flatmate to move out, those sort of things. It states their rent, it can state when it's due, and any other important condition you want to put on there. So that's a really, really great idea to do, and you can find templates on the Department of Building and Housing website, which is a very, very good website for these sort of things. So if you've done everything verbally and informally, which is actually happens quite a lot, it can get nasty, and it's so much better to have that certainty, and probably for both parties, I think. As for this problem, if you wanted to move out, it's a good idea to give her a reasonable amount of notice and ask her to move out, basically. If you guys agreed to notice or anything like that, then use that time period, but otherwise just a reasonable amount of time. So give her a bit of time to look for a new place, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, something like that.
Yeah, when I used to flat, we had a system that if somebody moved out voluntarily, then they waited until we found another flatmate and then transferred their part of their bond to the new flatmate and let them move in. Okay, so the difference between flatmates and tenants are that tenants are on the agreement and flatmates aren't. Does that also mean that tenants are responsible for the tenancy and flatmates aren't?
Yeah, for sure, and it's important to get this distinction really clear. I can't sort of say this enough. So everyone out there, ask yourselves whether you're tenants or flatmates, because your rights are very different. And if you've got a problem with your flatmate that is really breaking down to a point where people are going to have to move out, then it might be worth giving us a call and just seeing what you can do about that. So we covered bond briefly, and let's go into that a bit more now. So say I'm a tenant and my landlord asked me to pay him 2 weeks bond before moving in. So that's all good. 6 months later though, I want to move out. Now, the house is pretty much spotless. This is an absolutely true story, by the way. This happened to me. So the house is pretty much spotless, but the landlord wants to keep my bond for minor little things like scratches on the wall, those sort of things. So can he do that?
Well, I think the first thing to mention is that you don't necessarily have to have a bond in a tenancy agreement, but nearly always you will have one. So what happens is that bond is paid into the Department of Building and Housing, and it's lodged with them. It has to be lodged with that department within 23 working days, and you must have proof that that bond has been lodged. This is to make sure the landlord isn't doing something dodgy with the bond, and that an independent authority can kind of monitor what happens with that bond once the tenancy agreements are discharged.